Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, June the 13th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's produced the program. If you're in the St. John's Metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 86. 26, so I suppose another late night on tap as the Oilers try to get back in the Stanley Cup final. Of course, down 2-0 against the Florida Panthers. 9:30 Island time start. If they can't get the power play figured out, it's over. Anemic, to say the very least. 0-7 so far in the finals. So, and as you heard Brian Medore just mention, and when recapping the Blue Jays' loss yesterday, and I think he mentioned George Springer in particular with 3 feeble swings when they had a chance to come back and maybe get ahead of the Milwaukee Brewers, who are a super fun team. Now, give me a team that runs like the Brewers all day long. But when you have these highly paid athletes woefully underperforming, you know, I heard Brian say maybe send Springer down to the minors. He's making $21 million this year and doing absolutely nothing. But on that front, and this, interestingly, and I remember this happening, it was on this date in 1994, Chicago Cubs second baseman Ryne Sandberg, he retired because of what? He was playing so poorly. And as a result of his retirement on that day, he forfeited $15.7 million of his $25 million contract, as opposed to coasting it out. Like 99.9% of athletes would do, Sandberg said, that's it, I'm not doing anything, I'm not living up to my contract, I'm retiring. He was eventually inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2005, one of the best players of a generation at the second base position, but forfeits almost $16 million because he realizes, I am betraying my contract and my team, I'm no good, I'm done. Anyway, let's keep going. 5 days left in the K-12 system for the students anyway. I think the teachers work maybe till next Thursday or Friday, can't remember, even though I'm married to one. I wonder where we are in the education accord. So we all know what the health accord looks like and what it means for a 10-year roadmap into modernizing and transforming the healthcare system. Same goals were attached to the education accord. It hasn't gotten any traction or attention. It was announced back in the sometime late in January. Anyway, so they're looking at short, medium, long-term goals for the education system. And they have so-called 4 pillars that they're looking at. Early learning and childhood development, education engagement and transformation, health and well-being in education environments, post-secondary education, and learning across the lifespan. Okay, so pretty broad. And I want Drs. Burke and Dr. Goodenough, who are the co-chairs, I don't know how far down the road they are, but you know, when you think here comes the summer, and that's kind of it for the school season, it probably should be the beginning of all the really hard work that desperately needs to be done. And maybe, just maybe, some people might think I talk about education too much, but I don't think so. And I think we've got some short-term goals that have to be attended to ASAP. When we talk about the healthy environment in school, I read a story this morning that is literally heartbreaking. It's about the long-lasting impacts of being bullied in school. And the story is about this one particular lady, Kelsey Clark is her name. She graduated from high school 10 years ago and still, to paraphrase, still haunted about how she was treated her entire way through, from grade 1 through grade 12. She was picked on because she was vulnerable. People just sought her out. She said, it didn't really matter what I did, what I said, who I was with. People just sought me out. So her days would start with a panic attack. You know, it's worthwhile for parents to not be oblivious to the fact that maybe, just maybe, their child is the victim. And bullying is really an all-encapsulating word that probably doesn't live up to its billing, given the fact that some of the instances are actually violence and criminal acts. But it's worth, I would suggest, and there's no handbook and there's no perfect parent out there, including me, to speak with our children. Maybe we don't know whether or not they're on the receiving end, you know, whether it be recognizing their mood changes or what have you. But also, and probably more importantly, is who knows that even if you're a well-behaved at-home child, might indeed be succumbing to peer pressure at school and is part of that mob mentality, and may indeed be absolutely shattering the life of one of their classmates. I mean, these issues are huge. I appreciate the fact that families consider sending me emails about what their children are experiencing in school. And, I try to be empathetic and to react as appropriately as possible. But this issue is so pervasive. We've heard from the NLTA about the huge spike in violence in schools, but some of the so-called maybe innocuous bullying can really be detrimental. And it leads full well to some young people saying, I'm not going to school today. I just cannot handle it anymore. So we've got to wrap our minds around this kind of stuff. And then again, just one more reminder about some of the stories I've read in other places where they've tried to, quote unquote, take back your school. Bullies and the crowds that surround the bullies, they're generally cowards, right? And they will seek out the most vulnerable. And so one example of taking back your school, and this is available in every single school in this province, is for those who are the most popular. They're on the hockey team or the track team, or they're well respected. You know who I'm talking about. So there was one school in particular, it was a high school. And the person that took the bull by the horns was the quarterback of the football team. And what they did, and I think this would be a great exercise in every single school, is if the most popular kids were able to engage on social media, which can be hugely problematic, and did something like this. So little Johnny is being bullied constantly. And the high school quarterback tweeted out, John is exceptional in math. I can never thank him enough for the help he gives me in mathematics. Or Jane is a brilliant piano player. I have so much respect for Jane. Next thing you know, it kind of gives them the label of they're out of bounds. They are off limits. There'll be no bullying attached to these people because why? The most popular kids in school got your back. Because the students who are reasonable far outnumber those who are unreasonable and engage in some of these activities. And some of it's, maybe they're self-conscious about some of their own shortcomings and lash out. But just imagine, this woman, 10 years after high school, is still shattered. Maybe that's not a fair word, Kelsey. You can apply the word as you see fit. But she is still feeling the effects of how she was bullied from grade 1 through grade 12. So maybe, just maybe, we kind of maybe don't give it enough attention, possibly just downplay the real-life impact that it has on people, because we've heard some of the stories that end in tragedy. And not to be hyperbolic, but that's the case, and that's the facts of the matter. So if you want to take it on, we can do it. And also the entire concept, speaking of doing the hard work during the summer months as administrators, teachers, and more importantly, for folks who were representing once the NLESD, now working inside the Department of Education, to give us some sort of update. I'm not suggesting we have another task force or whatever the case may be. Education Accord sounds like a good idea to me. But let's hear some real, firm, concrete plans so when the kids go back to school in September, there will be a change in focus, whether it be on accountability or curriculum delivery and the timeliness for submitting your reports. And I'm not an educator, so I don't understand the new modern way of evaluating where a student is. And you know what I mean, with public exams and the like, because not everyone's good at taking exams, so it might not be a fair representation of how they did through the school year, but you want to take it on. Let's go. And I've been asked again by some members who are part of the group of 22, representing some 4,000 plus home care workers. Tomorrow is the last day to vote. Please, indeed, call NAPE. If you're unable to vote, call NAPE and register yourself, because maybe your agency didn't do so. It's going to be fascinating to see the outcome of this. NAPE is recommending that the home care workers ratify this agreement, this contract. I get the distinct feeling that that's maybe not going to happen. And if it does, it might be with pretty low numbers. And consequently, if we have a very slim majority that vote this contract through, that's going to present another, or open up another quintal of fish, I would think. So what do you think? Let's talk about it. Okay, an interesting story we were talking about, I don't know when it was, last week possibly. And it was about a federal court ruling about Health Canada's decision to reject this one person who suffers from what they call suicide headaches for medical access to psilocybin. And of course, that's the psychedelic that's found in the shrooms, the magic mushrooms. So the judge said it was unreasonable and unintelligible for Health Canada to reject them because they do indeed have a safe access program. I think we're going to hear more of these types of stories. And interestingly and sadly, involved in this alternative form of care, they even talked about some of the issues regarding medical assistance in dying. So if you are looking for, you don't have to exhaust all available treatment options. So it's interesting that they're going to allow this fella to get to the psilocybin, and it's medical, it's a prescription. It's not going out in the cow patties and picking mushrooms. But the whole concept of MAID, I know it's a very traumatic issue to be broaching on the live public airwaves, but the initial concept of when things were dire, the prognosis was done. Your life was going to be full of misery and death is around the corner. And maybe, just maybe, between conversations with doctors and your family, it might be an option for some. The way it's being applied in this country is absolutely unconscionable. It's being offered as a go-to before there's any evaluation of additional supports that could be offered, whether it be to be in your own home, to be safe, to get some alternative treatments possibly. So I know that really is a massive issue to be trying to consider and to discuss. But the way it's being applied, it's simply not working. And it's not the way it was initially intended to be working either. I mean, just think of some of the examples we've heard. Veterans going to Veterans Affairs, trying to get some help and some support. And one of the first things out of the person's mouth, the counselor or whoever they're speaking with, is, have you considered MAID? That's not what we're supposed to be doing in this country. So that was all included in that one story, which is a lot. All right, how we doing out there, David? A couple of quickies on the federal front. So we spoke with Senator Fabian Manning about some of the domestic violence issues and the need to have a real firm strategy in place. And now members of Parliament just yesterday unanimously voted through the House of Commons through third readings, now into the Senate. It's a bill to criminalise coercive control. So that's a pattern of behavior, of course, directly associated that perpetuates domestic abuse. So we know when that happens. So they're talking about the bill would criminalize actions like attempting to control an intimate partner's actions, employment, finances, or other property. So we know that this has been a real issue. The one woman who brought it forward in the private member's bill, she's an NDP member, Laurel Collins, she has personal experience inside her own family. Her sister's partner had taken away her keys, bank card, cell phone, and prevented her from leaving the house, told her what to do, when she could do it, and how she could do it. So now they're going to be able to criminalize this coercive behavior. Because we know that some cases actually make their way into the courts, and you are allowed inside the Divorce Act to include this as issues or mitigating factors regarding control of the kids, custody, for instance. But this makes all the sense in the world because it's just becoming far too common. We hear the stories in this province, and of course they're mimicked across the country. So bravo for all members of Parliament, of which I think currently there's 338, saw the light and unanimously can agree with some things that should be apolitical. We're talking about the protection of individual Canadians, predominantly women, but certainly some men, because you could indeed be a man where the wife is the primary breadwinner, and that could be manifest itself on that edge of the equation as well. So bravo for the MPs to be able to work together on at least some stuff. Anyway, let's take it on. All right, another day, another report from the Auditor General. And we spoke with Denise Hanrahan on this program last week about a report regarding some 69 recommendations not yet to be implemented and how we're going to try to get some teeth so that enforcement, as opposed to just highlighting the shortcomings of government. Yesterday, a report was released regarding Oilco. I'm not so sure it's as damning, but it's concerning. So one of the key issues is job classification and the rate of pay. So very clearly, Nalcor is rejecting that particular recommendation coming from the Auditor General. Jim Keating, who's the CEO at Oilco, said classification would likely result in salaries being frozen indefinitely or in termination and restaffing for transitioned positions. They're talking about the fact that if you had a job at Oilco and the similar job at government, working in the government, the disparity is real. So they're talking about the fact that a similar position in government for Mr. Keating pays about $182,000 per year. Mr. Keating's salary approximately $312,000. Now, if there are positions in a market competitive world that require certain rates of pay, okay. But the out and out rejection of job classification and the use of contractors, I mean, remember back in Muskrat Falls days, as opposed to being hard on as staff with the required amount of money to be paid versus day rates for these really lucrative earnings for these day rates for the consultants. So they are going to accept some of these recommendations, but let's just say this as a blanket. Look, with all due respect, which is an interesting caveat to lead off with any comment, if you're working for the government, not only do we need you to be productive and effective, but we need you to be prudent. Remember, it's not your money. So if we're talking about travel expenses, if we're saying that people can just, of their own accord, upgrade into business class, another $1,000 bill on top of your already expensive travel, it just doesn't feel or sound right or fair. It's not your money. It's our money. If you'd like to upgrade and you're already making pretty good money, pay for your upgrade. If we have even things that seem minuscule, like cell phone bills, some of these cell phones have been in action for long after people have stopped working with the oil company. So again, the examples are as long as your arm of the willful, oblivious nature of how some people working for the government in either crown corporations or for the government proper to just not be respectful of our money. You know, it seems pretty brazen, and there's not much can be done about it. I mean, they're going to accept some of these recommendations. Here they are. Oilco accepts the recommendations to fill necessary vacant positions. Ensure that expenses are incurred to do so in accordance with government policies. Good. Develop monitoring and reporting processes to ensure expenses and ensure that all board members, employees, and certain contractors are trained in conflict of interest policies, and that the certification of understanding and compliance, as well as disclosure of any conflicts, is done annually. It is kind of remarkable to know that we have to have an Auditor General do this important piece of work to make recommendations as fundamental as the 4 out of the 5 that they're willing to accept, but won't accept the job classification issue. It would be nice to know exactly why. How are we doing out there, David? A couple of quickies before we get to you. Interestingly, haven't heard much from people out in rural Newfoundland talking about the proposed changes from the PUB regarding how they set the price for gasoline or diesel, all the fuels, pardon me, I'll just leave it at that. Real life affair. So talking about being further from the urban centres, some of the import hubs, here's the pragmatic numbers for you to consider. Given the current markup on the Avalon Peninsula, the proposed changes would add 0.7 cents per litre. But if you're living in communities, for example, like Fogo or St. Brennan's, the increase would be more like 5 cents. So a little bit surprising we haven't heard much from people in rural parts of the province on that, but that's a huge difference. Less than a cent here and 5 cents there. So let's talk about it. Last one before we get to your calls. So today begins the 50th G7 summit in Apulia in Italia. Okay. There's obviously a lot on the agenda, and we can take on some of these big issues if you're so inclined. You know, there's talks about yet another loan flowing to Ukraine. Okay. But defence spending in full. Like yesterday when speaking with Liberal Member of Parliament Joanne Thompson, talking about the fact that some of the changes to help or assist first-time home buyers, they were given a thumbs up by the banks. Of course they were. I mean, the banks are going to get more business. So we have to be careful with who we sometimes listen to regarding thumbs up or thumbs down, approval or rejection of any government policy. Of course the banks said yes, because the banks are going to get more business out of it. Similarly, possibly, when we talk about defence spending. So the Business Council of Canada has been wading into this issue more frequently in the recent past. And this is what they call the potential for diplomatic isolation. Of the 32 members of NATO, only Canada has refused to commit to 2% of GDP spending on defence. Now, the caveat there is that some of the other countries that have said they will, I mean, saying you will and doing it are two different things. Our current increase in defence spending will bring the spend to about 1.76% of GDP by the end of the decade. Now, no party in the country has committed to that particular target of 2%. But what does that really mean insofar as diplomatic isolation? Like, is that something that we are really going to be ostracized because of that? The difference between 1.76 and 2? And of course, NATO doesn't get paid. It's talking about defence spending investment in your own country. So they talk about, you know, as it pertains to productivity and business relations. And what I mean by this being similar to the banks giving a thumbs up to a housing plan is any additional spending on defence would come with additional monies for members of the Business Council of Canada. So anyway, defence spending, more and more, we've seen polls reflect that Canadians are more interested in that particular issue than they have been in recent past. And we are only some 50% prepared if when the military had to jump into action. We're short some 16,000 troops across the different branches of the Canadian military. But the Business Council of Canada, leading into this G7 summit, they're worried about diplomatic isolation. Okay. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means your participation is required. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Tracy. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty.
Hi
Good
there.
morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm well, thanks. How about you?
Good. You got some great topics on there this morning. I'm calling from the West Coast. And since we're talking about accountability and things like that, I wanted to know why are we having all these drug trafficking busts going on? They're brought out to the media, as you know, and yet there is no accountability because they're all tied up in the court and there's no final outcome to it. So they're out there free to keep. Actually, some of them, Patty, are in the court system and getting caught again while they're in the court system for doing the same thing.
You're right. So, but I would suggest the vast majority of the bus where the media are invited to see the take, the cash, the drugs, the weapons and the like, people are convicted and are sent to prison. So your concern is that while they're in the courts, maybe out on bail, doing the same thing, continuing to peddle their drugs while they're being tried for another drug-related crime?
Right.
Okay.
And besides, a lot of it are tied up in the courts for years. For years. I've been following it. I've been watching them because I have a daughter myself who was involved with substance abuse, and she committed crimes due to that. And I'm watching this, and she did her time in federal. She's almost done. And I'm watching all over this past course of a couple of years here, even on the West Coast, I see no end to it. They're tied up in the court.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what you might be referring to specifically, but there is such a thing in this country now based on a court ruling in Alberta called the Jordan decision. So that means that the trials have to begin by 18 months after charges were laid, but that does not speak to the fact that there can be all sorts of motions made and dragging of feet throughout the court system. That's for sure.
Right. It's being manipulated. Like, this is the thing. They know how to get around the court system. They know how to drag it out. And it's just my concern that irks me because we have so much crime, so many deaths due to drugs and all of this, but we're not looking at the big root of it because all of this money is going right up the chain. Like when these substance users are desperate and they're stealing and robbing, all of that money, they're not benefiting from what they're stealing. They're getting their next fix. It's all going up the chain. And this is the root of it. And if we don't soon start taking it serious in the justice system, that I just can't see things getting better, only worse, because we're telling them it's okay to sell drugs because nothing's going to happen to you.
Well, I think that there's a need to adjust the criminal code, specifically on the issue of when these drug dealers are purposefully blending in or mixing in or cutting in, whatever the word is, lethal drugs like fentanyl. Now, I know cocaine on its own can be lethal, and I know heroin or crystal meth, all as a standalone drug, can indeed kill you, but we know that some drugs are much more dangerous insofar as their toxicity than others. So I don't know why we haven't addressed that. Pardon me?
Indeed. I mean, and this generation we have growing up now, I mean, they seem so fearless. And it's like they think nothing can hurt them. But, you know, you can have someone go and use drugs once, and if that is cut with something, it can kill them.
It can drop you where you stand, absolutely.
Right on. And, like, I'm just saying, like, we got to get to the root of this. Because we can have all the recovery out there. We can have all these programs. We can try everything we can do. We can get awareness out there. But until the justice system gets on board, or the criminal code, as you say, and get this dealt with as well, like I cannot see a deterrent to all the drugs coming into this province. And how easy it is to get. It's scary. I have 3 grandkids growing up myself, and it is scary. Of what it's going to be if it's this bad now.
I'm not going to argue with that because the drug use, especially with these more illicit drugs, is really quite prevalent. What I will say to that, and this is where it becomes tricky for me to even try to talk about solutions, because what we do know, and unfortunately we know this, is that the way that we, say for ourselves and the Americans, have approached drugs and the war on drugs, it just simply hasn't worked. It just hasn't. I mean, if anything, it's worse than it was before when we had the Just Say No campaigns with the Nancy Reagans, and we had the complete and utter war on drugs and the way the military presence in South America, for instance. Trillions of dollars later, it's worse than it's ever been. So where the solution lies, I have no earthly idea. But we have been fighting a losing battle for decades, getting zero further ahead. In fact, a couple of steps backwards. So when we know that's to be the case, then how do we change our tune to try to protect our members of society, especially younger Canadians, from being exposed to it at a tender age, which of course leads to a potential death spiral of addiction? But we know the war on drugs has not worked. So where the answer is, I really do not know.
No, me neither. Like, it's a big puzzle, and it hits me to the core because I have, I've had it in my own family, and it's just so frustrating because I'm like, my God, like everything seems to be getting worse in the province instead of getting better, and it's so scary to watch. Like, I don't know what's going to be next, and I just hope that someone somewhere to deal with all this, who got the power to start the ball rolling to see what we can do differently, that would be great, because I think we really need to start somewhere here with this. What's not working, we know, so we have to try things that may work. And I do believe that this is a part of it, a big part of it. You got to get to the root of it, where all this is coming from.
Well, I mean, the backbone of it is organized crime. And if we think it's bad here, I mean, just look at some of the numbers that we see elsewhere across the country. So, yeah, I'm mostly worried about my own backyard, but this is a national conversation that needs to be entertained, I think. Definitely.
It's gotten out of hand, and I really I'm glad you brought up about the bullying today, Patty, because that's becoming a big issue, and it's not only in the higher grades in school; it's actually happening in elementary schools quite often now too.
100% it is.
It is, yeah. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I just wanted to get that out there. Because that frustrates me. It triggers me when it comes to drug trafficking and the flow of it. And I kind of want to protect my own family against it like anybody would,
I do. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Feel free to disregard if you want. So how long has your daughter been in prison?
Right now, she's been in for a little over a year in federal. She did go to federal before, and she got released into a halfway home, and it did not work out. She relapsed. She ended up on a day pass, and she relapsed down in St. John's. And so now she's been in for a little over a year again, and she didn't do any parole this time. She did her full time. And I have to say, Patty, she has received so much help in there with programs this time. It's unbelievable.
That's what I was going to ask about, what kind of support she's getting to try to clean up her act.
She's went everywhere, right down to the bottom, from her addictions to her mental health, to her anger management, to how she interacts with people in society, even parenting classes in there. Everything. She's been working in there. Like, she's been doing great. So it scares me that she's doing this. She's turned around and has to come out to this. She says she doesn't want to see it. She don't want to hear of it again. But it's still out there. So it's still going to be a battle. I mean, she is still in recovery. She will always be in recovery.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, I hope she's doing okay. And, because we often talk about the punishment and maybe not enough focus on the rehabilitation, which is, of course, important. Unless we are just willing to have the gates to the penitentiaries simply be turnstiles and recidivism rules today, that's bad for public safety. That's bad for me and you and everyone listening to this program. So I'm glad she's getting some support, and hopefully it works this time, whatever that actually means. But, Tracy, I appreciate making time for the program. Thanks for the call.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's try to take a break on time. When we come back, Brandon wants to talk about the status of an investigation, and then we're going to talk a little education, and then we're going to be speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1. Brandon, you're on the air.
Good morning, Petty. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Boy, I've been better.
What's
I've
going
been better, sir. Well, a couple of weeks ago there, my sister was deceased in a car accident. And to me, it seemed very suspicious on how it happened. And the investigation is supposed to be going on. And this is 2 weeks in now. And nothing has happened.
So, right off the bat, I'm so sorry to hear of your loss. My condolences. So, if you think there's something suspicious, might that be part and parcel why the investigation is taking this length of time?
Okay, yes, I do understand that, but I have been in contact with officers over the last week, and some of my sister's co-workers actually were willing to give statements, and the officers have yet to go and get statements from them. And the main investigator right now happened to go on holidays. And again, like I said, there was no statements took from people who were willing to give them.
So, do you know the answer to this question? So, if whoever the lead investigator is taking time off, does that mean the file remains inactive, or it's just passed off to someone else to dot some I's and cross some T's?
Well, I can't say it's passed on to somebody else because my father tried to call another officer and get answers, and they will not tell us nothing. They will not tell us a word. And my sister got deceased on the 2nd of June, and she got buried on the 11th of June. The 8th of June. And to this day, we still can't get nothing from the cops or nothing like this. And you know what? Basically, today, I'm trying to reach out and get this over the province and over the line that, this is not right for what happened. And, I'd like to get a lawyer and stuff on this. And, if there's anybody out there that can help with a GoFundMe to try and get a lawyer and stuff to get the justice we need.
Brandon, what do you think you need a lawyer for at this point?
Listen, I do because, I don't even know how to go about saying all this now, really.
The only reason I ask is because unless there is a matter of law to be challenged, possibly in the courts, you might be spending money. You do, and what would that be? I'm just curious. I'm just asking questions out of curiosity.
Okay, well, like I said, I can say no names.
Yep.
But the male was up on charges for my sister. And my sister ended up getting deceased, and his charges got dropped. And they were not no low charges, like they were bad. And they got dropped. And I know, I've got statements, we got evidence, the proof and stuff like this that we're trying to give the cops. The people wants to give statements. And the cops, seems like they're not doing nothing about it. And listen, and on top of this, I know this for a fact because the night that my sister got deceased, she phoned my grandmother at approximately 11:28 and said, if you don't hear from me in a half an hour to call the cops. Then she phoned back 5 minutes after and said everything was okay. And that was the last time we heard from her. And then until 4 p.m. or 4 a.m., the cops showed up and said that she was deceased in a car accident. And I also got statements from witnesses that heard them fighting the night before and stuff like this. Like I said, there's people that my sister worked with was willing to give statements, and the cops are not doing nothing about it.
I'm not sure where I could possibly direct you. So it's one thing if you establish a fundraising page like GoFundMe or what have you to see if you can hire a lawyer. I don't know if this is an issue that can be broached by the folks at the Public Legal Information Association, which what we call by acronym PLAN, but I can give you a phone number. They might be able to point you in the right direction or potentially give you some legal advice.
Well, basically, I'm reaching out to you this morning, and I did also hear that you guys were talking about domestic violence and stuff here earlier on the show there before you start taking calls.
Yep.
Well, this is a domestic violence thing. So this is kind of why I'm reaching out. Like, more got to be done. You know what I mean?
I understand.
This is my concern, and, like, you know, here it is now, 2 weeks, my poor sister has been gone, and we ain't got so much as a fingerprint. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry to hear all of this. It's all really quite troubling. What I will do, in addition to having you put it out over the airwaves, and I appreciate you making time for the program, is I'm going to give you a telephone number here now and just see if there's any legal advice that could be offered at this stage. And I don't know what they're going to tell you. Pardon?
Thanks, Patty. Listen, I okay, you can give me this number, but I'm going to tell you, I wanted to put this out over there this morning, and I wanted it so everybody could hear this because, you know, for example, do you ever see the First 48, the TV show?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Okay, yes. Well, you know, something happens, then, you know, they kind of look into it, this and that. You don't go on vacation and go fishing.
I understand your concern. I really do. It's becoming clearer as the conversation rolls on. So, look, take this number and see if there's any potential legal advice or legal referrals that can be made. So, do you have a pen or a pencil handy?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so 709
Yeah.
722
Yeah.
2643.
Okay.
So
That's 709-722-2643.
That's right.
Okay.
And let me know.
For sure.
Let me know if you have any luck there. And once again, I'm so sorry to hear about your sister.
Yes, thank you, Patty. And like I said this morning, now I heard you guys, you know, about domestic violence and all this stuff going on, and you know, I felt like I got to get this out there, Patty, because, like I said, it's been 2 weeks now since, you know, she'd been gone, and you know, we ain't got so much as a fingerprint. We ain't got nothing, and you know, we like. You know, something got to happen.
I understand that. So call that number, see if they can give you some appropriate or helpful advice, and let me know how you make out.
Yes, I will. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate yours. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome, Brandon. Bye-bye. That, concerning, I'll call it. Let's go to line number 8. Bill, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, my name is Bill. I have found a large brindle dog in the vicinity of Gear Street and Prince of Wales Street.
Okay, what kind of dog, sorry?
It's a brindle color, large dog, black and brown.
Okay, a big black and brown dog found around Gear Street.
Gear Street and Prince of Wales, yeah. He must have snapped his collar.
Oh, so no collar, no tags?
No.
All right, well, obviously someone's looking for him. It's a wonder that they might even be considering calling this program to say they've lost their dog. So you would want to leave your number with David? Is that the best play?
Yeah, Dave's got my number.
Okay. So there we go. A brindle collar, black and brown, large dog, Prince of Wales Street, Gear Street. If that's your dog, you call Dave Williams. We'll connect you with Bill.
Thank you so much, Patty.
Appreciate your time, Bill. Thanks for the call.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to be speaking with the PC member for Topsail Paradise. He's the critic of the education portfolio. That's Paul Dinn. Then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the PC member for Topsail Paradise. He's the education critic. That's Paul Dinn. Paul, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
I was calling in to speak about the parents in Kenmount Terrace and the work they're doing basically to hold government accountable on when that school will be built, and more importantly, I guess their immediate concerns are, what's going to be done to address the overcrowding and the lack of space in the feeder schools. And I listened to you in your preamble, and there's a very, very definite connection with what you were talking about in terms of healthy school environments and bullying and violence in the school. And the parents that are speaking out, and it seems to be a trend now, come together as a community and try and get government to act, similar to what Paradise community has done for high school in Paradise. But I look at this, and you said it, you mentioned that, in no time September will be around again, and we would hope that some of these issues are addressed. And, all that the parents are asking for is some, clear, concise answers on what's being done to address the issues that occur in Lark Hall Academy and Leary's Brook. Yes, they've announced the school, and they're saying they're going to be definitively and started on the in 2026 will be open. And we can question that all we want, but the immediate issue is, what's being done to deal with the issues with the schools right now. And when we're dealing with overcrowded classrooms, and we see an increase in complexities in the classrooms, we see classroom resources that are strained or non-existent, and the sizes and compositions are just not conducive to the best learning environment. And then you wonder why there's bullying and violence in the schools. We cannot be jamming kids into schools like cattle in a pen and think that they're going to get the best education they can get. And, this doesn't just affect the students. This affects the teachers, the teaching staff. You talked about, you noticed someone that's still dealing with issues after going through school and being bullied. These are real issues. These are real issues that have long-term effects. And when I listen to the parents on Kenmount Terrace or Paradise or wherever who are advocating for their children and essentially advocating for the teaching staff as well, to have the best environment in which to provide an opportunity for our kids and make sure that's a safe environment. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're trying to get here. And you may recall back not too long ago, a couple of months back, Mike Walsh was a teacher, and I know Mike. Mike's not a small guy. And
Mike's massive.
No, he's talking about the violence in the classroom.
Yeah.
And his classroom at the time, 25% special needs, understaffed. We have a low ratio of educational psychologists. And, I speak a lot on mental health as well. And, 70% of mental health and addictions issues arise in adolescence. And we wonder, we look at what these parents are trying to do, and they're trying to do what government should be doing, is ensuring that our education system, our bricks and mortar, as well as our staff, are sufficient enough to deal with these issues and ensure that the best education. I can give you an example. I'm being up in Paradise and CBS. Over the years I've been here, Paradise Elementary is a good example. Pretty much a brand new school was built and portables were added on. Holy Family, similar situations. Portables added on. Villanova Junior High was tore down, rebuilt. Portables added on. So it's very, very detrimental. It's very important that when parents are reaching out and talking about the size of the school and how many it should accommodate, government needs to be looking far ahead. They need to ensure that in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, the schools that are built can accommodate the students that's going in, so that we have libraries, that we have cafeterias, that we have green space. All this leads to a better mental and physical development of our kids. And when you start cramming them into schools, violence and bullying is going to happen. The government went through this thought exchange and got comments back from parents in the Kenmount Terrace feeder system. One of the biggest issues there, one issue that was quite evident, was they didn't want their grade 9s going to PWC for issues around violence and bullying, and government has ignored it. But these are issues, and you said it. We got 3 months now. Not to rain on the children's vacation, but I mean, in no time September will roll around, and parents want to have answers and want to see what's going to happen. And I know they've reached out and asked for a town hall. I hope it happens, and I hope these questions can get answers. But the bullying in the classrooms, the violence there, it's just totally out of hand. It needs to be addressed. You're coming in with an education accord that's talking about short, medium, and long-term issues, but we've had multiple reports over the years, and I'm baffled.
I'm going to jump in. So
Yeah.
there's still lots to be understood about Kenmount Terrace, and we cannot underbuild. We've done that several times in the recent past, and portables are not the solution. They might be, an option, but they're not ideal, to say the very least. So let's shelve Kenmount Terrace just for a second.
Yep.
Because I don't know if they're going to be open by the September 26th. Remains to be seen. It sounds pretty ambitious to me, because we compare the size and the scope of Waterford Valley High. That's about what we're talking about building in Kenmount Terrace, which is a massive piece of construction. Okay. But for September, what do you think we can or should do, whether it be at Larkhall Academy or Leary's Brook, because their issues are not going to go away come September, whether it be for overcrowding, and they're going, for instance, I think it's Leary's Brook is going to grow by 60 students. Now, we're told by the government, if the grade 9s are gone, then of course that reduces that student population, but they're already bursting at the seams. So what do you think we should do for September in those two particular schools?
But I think in those schools, and portables aren't out of the question when it comes to that, to creating that extra space, that extra classroom space.
But they might not have the geographical footprint to accommodate portables.
Yeah, and I don't know either, but I mean, these are things that have to be looked at. How to create that space. I mean, you can do the reconfigurations all you want, but I mean, what I'm looking at here, and as you just alluded to, the actual one school is going to actually increase in population. So I mean, what are they looking at? What figures are they actually looking at to determine that? Obviously, it shouldn't be happening that way. You shouldn't be making an overcrowded situation worse, which is what it seems to be. But I would be looking at those schools and seeing, configuration is one, but I'd be also looking at those schools and see, is there a possibility, are there opportunities to put a portable or something there? Are there opportunities to find space for the kids to go outside? Can you fix that the parking lot that they go out? Can you lay down a bit of turf over the summer and have a green space for them to go out to? There's some of these temporary solutions that they can come at, but I mean, right now it comes back to Paddy. It comes back to lack of planning. But these issues did not just occur overnight.
No, but the parking lot is full of cars.
I understand that, but I mean, these are things you look at and see what you can create. You look at the footprint. I'm hoping to get out to the schools tomorrow or maybe next week to have a look at myself and see what's there. But I mean, it's just it's just so troubling when you look at what's happening and on something that should have and could have been predicted, going forward. And creating those spaces, even if you put a portable somewhere or gave them a library space somewhere, there's things that can be done in the interim that can ease that, even though they may be temporary and maybe that portable's going to be in an odd spot for a couple of years. These are things that need to be addressed. But cramming kids and teachers into classrooms and overcrowded schools is not the solution.
I appreciate the call, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Paddy. Have a great one.
You too. Bye-bye.
All the best.
Paul Dinn, PC member, Tops of Paradise, education critic. Let's stick with education, so to speak. Line number 6, say good morning to the assistant principal at McDonald Drive Junior High. That's Chess West. Good morning, Chess. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Thank you for taking my call.
Happy to do so. And what's on your mind?
I just want to have a little chat with you this morning here about a project, definitely educationally tied, but a little different than probably is discussed. Not that we don't have issues around classrooms and students and teaching and learning and all that stuff, but I want to talk to you this morning about gardening. So I know you're familiar with the school. Out between our school, where the buses stop every morning at McDonald Drive Junior High in Toronto Street, there's a huge grassy lot there. There's a basketball court on it, and there's an outdoor classroom there. But there's a fairly big open flat spot, and We are looking to turn that into roughly a half-acre shared use stool community garden that will be used absolutely for teaching and learning and curriculum and all that stuff, but also would give an opportunity for other organizations around the community to come in and use the garden. So we're doing a lot of fundraising around that, and I guess I want to draw people's attention to it. If you drop into our school's website, mdjh.info, you'll see a splash page there that has all the information about the garden and what we're doing, and it also has a link to a fundraiser. So it's a pretty expensive vision that we have here as far as getting started. Lots of infrastructure. We're going to do fencing and, of course, lots of accessible areas for all sorts of people to get in there, and the startup is going to be significant, but at the same time we feel that this part of town, in a world where we're talking food security and healthy food choices and the costs at the supermarket, we're hoping that people will sort of jump in and share that vision and help us build this thing.
It's an excellent idea right off the bat. So do you have a price tag or a guesstimate about what it's going to cost for startup?
Well, I would say between the sod that's there right now and Holland Spuds, I would say somewhere in the vicinity of around $50,000 to get us off. The price tag right now, the big one is we're looking at around $30,000 to have appropriate fencing. Without making it out to be a negative comment, I'm going to say that with the sort of asset that we're hoping to put in there in infrastructure, we're going to need a fence around it to protect it. So if people can envision something similar to what you would see if you dropped over here to look at our soccer pitch, we're looking at a 7.5 to 8 foot fence around it. We're talking greenhouses and lots of fruits, vegetables, berries, ornamental flowers, and stuff like that. And we want to make sure we want to protect it. Not suggesting that anybody is going to go in there and do something terrible, but we want to make sure that if we're putting our money in there, we need to protect that. So a $30,000 bill up front for the fencing, and then we're looking at about another $20,000 for things like dirt and plants and seeds and all that stuff. So we need soil and stuff as well, and that comes at a cost. Yeah, so around $50,000.
Jess, have you applied to the provincial government inside the Community Garden Support Program that was launched in the most recent budget?
I have. So we were lucky enough to get, we have around $10,000 now from Active NL, a generous startup for sure, and we've got a couple of smaller grants into the hundreds, not into the thousands for sure, and we've got some more grant applications out there floating around, some of which came back we weren't successful in getting, but we're looking anywhere and everywhere all the time for support, and including running our own, like I said, our little fundraiser here on a 50/50 online. So anybody, if you're listening in Goose Bay and you sort of see that vision and believe in, kids doing more hands-on stuff and getting their hands dirty and being a little bit more sustainable, you can support us just as well as if you're across the street here on Quebec Street and you might want to come down and plant a bed of carrots.
And there's a lot of satisfaction that comes with planting a seed and seeing the final product going through the harvest. So this is an all-encompassing good news project. So I'm not to say that they might be able to do a whole lot for you, but the folks at the Food Producers Forum, they're probably keenly aware of every single avenue to apply for some funding. And they just told us just this week about how they were successful in one arena. I can't remember exactly what pot of money it was. So they might be a good resource.
Fantastic, excellent. And as I said, and I want to make sure that I do make sure I make this connection with the community. So just to make sure that people get what we're saying. So we've got relationships. We've got official emails traded back and forth with seniors groups over at Tiffany Village, with McMorran Community Centre, with the Association for New Canadians, with Food First NL that would be interested in product that we're creating here. Yeah. So those are the things we want. So we have an interesting setup, especially with the senior seniors. Literally, I'm looking at their complex right across my parking lot here now. We have kids here that would be, they're strong and energetic, and they're here in the spring at planting season. Up until the end of the school year and even after with the gardening group. But then, of course, we have a beautiful garden facility as we envision it out there that is accessible to folks over at Tiffany Village. So they sort of, they inherit the garden, as it were, over the summer. We hope to have them working with our kids through the summer, and certainly in the fall. Then we all come back here and see what we've done and worked on together. The Association for New Canadians, huge multicultural representation here in this school, and we're hoping that and a lot of people who come here, our newcomers, they have farming and gardening traditions as a way of life. To have conversations and open conversations and open connections, around, their traditional foods that they can grow here. That's fantastic stuff that checks, as educator, checks all of our boxes.
Good
we're
news.
Talking citizenship. We're talking about food. We're talking about teaching and learning. So we're hoping by getting the word out through you, and thank you that we're doing this, and we're hoping to get a few people interested in sharing that vision with us. So, and in a year from now, maybe you can come down and haul a few carts. Who knows?
100%. Chess, I appreciate this. Keep me in the loop. I'll do whatever I can to help.
Awesome, Paddy. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jess. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Jess West, Assistant Principal, McDonald Drive Junior High. I wish we had time to talk about more education issues as well, but anyway, let's take a break for the news. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the President of Municipalities, Newfoundland and Labrador. That's Amy Cody. Good morning, Amy. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay, thanks. How about you?
I'm great. Just wanted to touch base with you today just to follow up. Myself and the CEO of M&L, Rob Nolan, attended the Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference and trade show last week in Calgary. I know you spoke to Deputy Mayor Sheila O'Leary earlier this week about her participation as well, but just wanted to follow up. It was a great week, lots of wonderful sessions, and great takeaways certainly to bring back to our province.
Takeaways such as?
Well, I mean, one of the big things, we talk about the bullying and harassment issues that elected officials are facing. And when you go to Calgary and you're in a room with 3,200 other municipal officials, to hear that it's happening in every municipality is very, very scary. It just really highlights the need for change, the need for us to behave better, to encourage the public to behave better when you're working with and talking to or talking about elected officials, especially on the municipal level, when most of us do this work as volunteers. And it just shows how we need to be so much more supportive of each other to be able to continue to do the work that we do as municipal councillors. One of the statements that was made at the conference this weekend that really hit home for me is that it's democracy that's at stake when we're faced with increased instances of bullying and harassment, and people aren't interested in running for municipal politics or any level of government for that matter, or are deciding to step away previous to their term being over or not offering themselves again. We need people. We need people to be in those positions and to do the good work that municipal councillors do. So when they're being scared off or threatened or families are, nervous, it's very hard to continue to do this municipal work.
And so when those stories are told, did you come back with any ideas about how to combat it? Are things being implemented elsewhere that could work here?
Yeah, well, we're talking to our provincial counterparts, our federal counterparts. what the solution seems to be and what the talk seems to be is that we all need to work together. It needs to be collaborative on each level of government. It can't just be municipal councillors coming out and talking about, issues of harassment and working together to support each other and come up with a plan to, mitigate those instances from happening. We have to work collaboratively, municipally, provincially, and federally. We need to set examples of ourselves. We need to show, a lot of times this bullying and harassment is happening around our own council tables between our own colleagues. We need to do better. We need to recognize where we're doing wrong. We need to recognize that we have to do a better job. We need to be respectful. We need to practice what we preach. And so if we can work collaboratively to come up with some solutions, we also need to be support systems to each other. We need to talk instead of, hiding it, not talking about it, being embarrassed about it. We also need to talk about it. We need to start calling it out. We need to start recognizing when behavior is not appropriate, and we also need to talk about the good things too, the good words that we hear when we're being treated respectfully, when we treat each other respectfully. We need to talk about that and be supportive of that as well.
Well, I mean, you mentioned all three levels of government. We see the stories about the levels of threats being aimed at members of Parliament, and they have these locked doors recommendations, not taking any walk-ins and stuff, and people will justify it. They say, well, they're making my life miserable. That can indeed be the case, and there's lots of examples of. But at some point, and I don't think it's overstating to say we are actually talking about protecting democracy. Like, people encourage me to take a run at politics all the time, and I've never been less inclined. I mean, I take my swats as just sitting in this chair, but I see what's aimed at members of, whether it be the legislature, the House of Commons, or municipal councils, and it's just madness. And I get people frustrated, and probably more frustrated than ever before. This last stretch of a number of years has really changed the tune of many. So I don't know what the future looks like, because you guys have had some pretty successful campaigns about getting people to come out and run. Because we've had elections where we didn't even have a quorum running, with council seats going unfilled, not enough people running to actually fill up the entirety of the council chamber. So it's only going to get worse until we can figure out how we can fight back or combat it. I guess fight back is the absolutely wrong way to put it, but to deal with it. And people just need to, if you have a problem and or a complaint, it's not necessarily that you can't complain, because of course you can. It's your absolute right, but it's how you do it. It's the message can be very different when it comes across in a threatening manner versus being questioned or being criticized.
Exactly. That's absolutely right. And some of the best ideas and the best conversations can start from, I didn't agree how you did that, and this is why, and this is how I would have done it differently. I mean, that's information sharing, that's idea sharing, and that's where we need to be. It doesn't mean that you say, that was a stupid idea, and I can't believe you said that, and I'm never voting for you again, and whatever, right? I would rather have someone say to me, why did you make that decision? I don't understand it, and here's how I would have done it differently. Those are the conversations we need to have, and when we feel supported in the community, and when people are comfortable with coming to someone to have those conversations, then that's what makes all the difference in being able to attract people to run for these elected positions. I mean, it's a struggle. It really is. And I talk about it all the time, especially during Municipal Awareness Week, the different functions that we go to. Every time I have an opportunity, I talk about and I support the work that municipal councillors do, because I know how challenging it is. I know the amount of pride that we put into that work, and I know how important it is to our communities to have elected officials who are sitting around a table having the conversations to make sure that our communities thrive, grow, and become sustainable. Because, without people around that table, then, the decisions don't get made. your communities suffer, and we all suffer at the end of the day.
Fair, and I'm going to add this to it because this is absolutely spot on as well, and it's a tweet that just arrived, and it says, leaders need to be examples for respectful behavior at all levels. Watching politicians engage in lying and name-calling encourages people to behave badly. That's absolutely true. I mean, we do indeed reflect the way we're spoken to or at, and the way politicians engage each other sometimes leads to this type of boorish behavior by the electorate. So I think we all play a role in this, from the elected officials on down.
Oh, absolutely. And I said that off the top of our conversation, that a lot of times this happens around our own boardroom tables, and we need to be examples. We need to set the example of what's right and how to behave. We have the code of conduct now that, determines and helps guide, how elected officials behave in the public and, around the council table. We're held to a standard, and we need to hold each other to that standard and be responsible for our actions. This is, we have to be respectful, and you can get your point across without name-calling or bullying or, just being a jerk, really. There's different ways to do that and more effective ways. And as long as we hold ourselves to that standard, then it's easier for us to project to the community, too, the importance of that.
I appreciate the time this morning. There's so many issues we can discuss, but we've run out of time this morning, Amy. Thanks for the call.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Patty. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Amy Cody, president of MNL. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to line number 4. Peter wants to talk about the tragic car accident as well that claimed the life of one of the passengers. Peter, you're next. Don't go away. Come back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Peter, you're on the air.
Morning, Patty. Thank you for taking my call.
Happy to do it.
So I am calling. I know her brother spoke with you about 4 or 5 callers ago. I was sitting in a room filled with family that are just at their wits' ends with no answers. We talk about a 32-year-old lady who just did nothing but worked in the healthcare system, trying to save money to buy a house to take care of her grandmother, who she constantly was taking care of. And we got an abusive partner, known to the police, known all over this town for the way he treats ladies. They just had a court date, and it was thrown out, as Brandon said there, because she wasn't there to represent herself. Well, she wasn't there because she was dead. It's just sickening. This guy's hopping on Tinder. You know what I mean? It's going to happen to the next girl. We got witness statements. We got her coworker statements of her showing up to work with bruises. We've got other ex-girlfriends talking about his threats. This guy made consistent threats to hurt her grandmother and burn the house down with her and her pets inside. And left this late. You spoke earlier on that entrapment of domestic abuse. Like holding on to things and the threats behind it and stuff like that. And this poor lady called her grandmother and said if anything happens to her to call the police, and tried to escape with no shoes on. And Buddy jumped into the passenger window, grabbed the steering wheel, and drove him off the cliff. And as he's walking around, I guess my whole attention here is, sir, is here we are just about 2 weeks later, and the only lead investigator we've told that we can deal with has not only been off for the last few days, but it plans to be off for another week and a half. They're not passing it to anyone else. It's the only one we're allowed to deal with. It's just this is frustrating. Like, there's so much evidence we got here, and Buddy's already on his groups trying to hook up with other girls. He's already planning on leaving to go to Calgary. What do we do here? We're at our wits' ends, if a chocolate bar was stolen from Walmart, sir, you'd see 2 cop cars and 4 cops there, and 2 seconds later, you think they're going to go on a week vacation before they charge that person with theft under? This is just it's ridiculous. We're getting no answers. We've got tons of statements, and as the gentleman also mentioned, her brother earlier, time is of the essence in these type of cases, and we've got nothing. There's been no investigation. We went to go pick up her items from the police station. They still don't know anything about anything. They've not checked her phone. They've not taken any of our statements. They haven't sat down with us. We've left message, labeling them urgent at the police station to be called back on in regards to this. And and we're just all frustrated. This is going on 2 weeks now, and it looks like another week and a half. How much information is going to get lost in that? How much else is going to happen in that time? We're lost, sir. We don't understand why it's, something like this is not taking priority over a stolen Skidoo that they're advertising up on their websites, asking for information for, you know what I mean? Like, and I guess the point is, like, even if people have information, which we do, tons of it, who are we going to give it to? You call the RCMP and they tell you there's only one guy that's dealing with it. He's the only one who can help you. And sir, they're not even telling us when that person will be back. They're leaving. They say we're not allowed to disclose that information. He'll be back in a few days. We fortunately talked to another officer to find out he's still going to be gone for another week and a half. So we're looking at a month before they're even picking up any evidence in this very suspicious incident with tons of sensitive, pertinent information going unlooked at.
I'm not sure what to say beyond what the conversation sounded like with Brandon earlier. It's confusing. I think you make an interesting point. I mean, if we're talking about how aggressively they look for public information regarding stolen items like a Skidoo or a side-by-side or something like that, and the lack of communication between your family and the RCMP, I really don't know what's going on or what the backstory is here, but the way that it's been described and the relationship that the two had obviously gives reason for concern.
Yeah, and I'd say, and to throw out the court case that he was in there to deal with the abuse over because she wasn't present. Well, she wasn't present because she's dead. Like, and dead over domestic abuse. And then, like I said, sir, this guy's hopping on Tinder right now. He's messaging other girls. He's planning to leave the Calgary, and every day, another day goes by, we're left shaken and don't know where to turn to and don't know who to talk to and don't know how to go forward.
I don't know if Brandon made the call that I suggested in the number I gave him earlier.
I did write down that number, sir.
Okay.
I will definitely be calling. I'm not thinking like you discussed, I don't know where we would have rights and legal matters over here. My whole concern is, like I said, a chocolate bar goes missing at Walmart and two cop cars and 4 cops will be there in seconds, and those guys don't pay taxes. We're talking about a lady that was working for the healthcare system, 2 full-time jobs, taxpayer, and then at that end was taking care of her grandmother, who's not doing very well, and imaginably not doing any better today. And this is the response we get.
Well, I hope that the appropriate level of attention and investigation happens as soon as possible. My condolences on your loss. It's a terrible story, and some of the additional tidbits of information that you and your brother have been sharing are obviously quite distressing.
Yeah, we got her little sister, who she also raised, took in and helped raise when she needed help, and this little girl's she's not so little anymore, but she's been working so hard to get all the things together and all the statements together and talk to, coworkers about bruises and witness statements and the fact that this guy was stalking her at work, telling her what she was wearing at work when she was trying to stay away from him, this girl, her little sister, has been working so hard and has nowhere to hand this stuff into. No one's taking her call. She's been leaving messages day after day with the police, labeling them urgent, and not even a phone call back. And here we are 2 weeks later, and then looking at another week and a half before we even get a phone call returned.
Let me know when you know more, Peter.
Absolutely. I thank you again, Patty, for taking my call. I just wanted to bring awareness that we are stuck, dealing with a situation like this where we should be helped.
I appreciate your time. Once again, my condolences, and stay in touch.
Thank you very much, Patty. Have a good day.
You too, Peter. Bye-bye. All right. Boy, sometimes the jump from one call to another is tricky business. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the fact that Nevaeh's Lemonade Stand is back this Saturday, the 15th of June. John Denine on the line right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, John Denine. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
I'm doing okay, sir. How about you?
Not too bad. First of all, my condolences to the family. You know, it's hard stuff.
Yeah, I'd say.
But, you know, Saturday, June the 15th, the 10th annual Nevaeh's Lemonade Stand at the Paradise Double Ice Complex. We got the Masters men are going to be playing, baking the ballpoints, swinging bells. We got food trucks, guest performers, cheerleaders, drumline, dancers, dogs, circus acts, cotton candy, lemonade, of course, prize draws, games of chance, bouncy castle, faint painting, an antique car show. I mean, we got just about everything. You know,
it's brilliant that her memory has been preserved and cherished like this. What do you think it is about Nevaeh and her story that brings people out in droves? I mean, Stephanie O'Brien was in talk with Julian Mackey the other day, and I mean, people like Stephanie have jumped on board with both feet, and so many people are so energized by this. Why do you think that is?
You know, we have so many volunteers that and they've been with us from day one, and you know, still with us, and we got people wanting to join our group all the time, you know. And I think what it is with so many families that was helped out over the last 10 years, you know, with some money to try and help them pay their bills. You know, I mean, those families are coming out and they support us a lot, and then when their friends and their families hear about it, they come and support us, you know. And I think her story just spread so fast, it was unreal. I mean, you know, I guess where's a little child sick, I mean, I don't know, I guess it's just different type of thing. And I mean, we appreciate it so much. I mean, I can't believe it's been 10 years that this, she wanted to start this little lemonade stand down on the front lawn down by the house, and then we said, well, we can't do much of this because a couple of people want to join in, so we ended up going up by the school on the Gould Road there. I mean, I think that first year alone, I mean, the thoughts of raising roughly $20,000 wasn't even, we never even imagined that kind of money could have been raised, you know. And I mean, it's you know, it's families that, you know, they write a check to families. It's all done through, you know, through a committee and the Health Sciences Centre, Janeway, we say, and, you know, and they write them a check for $5,000 to help pay some of the bills, because I mean, we know what it's like when you got a sick child in the hospital, and I mean, you know, and a lot of people do, you know, and I mean, it goes a long way when people are support us so much. I mean, you know, she's going to be gone 6 years this year, which is hard to believe, you know.
It certainly is, and I would anticipate another big crowd this go around. So it's at the Paradise Double Ice Complex. Anything you want people to bring along?
No, just come along, and like I say, and, you know, if you come in there, just come in, show up, show your support, you know, and it's all basically donations, you know, and I got donations coming in already, and people are calling me and stuff, which we really appreciate. And not only that, I mean, if you're home and say, geez, I can't afford to go type of thing, listen, come on in, see one of us, and, you know, you want to, I mean, we got extra cups of lemonade there. We'd only be glad to give you one. Don't go away without getting the glass of lemonade if you don't have a few dollars to donate. You know, I mean, there's always someone that'll come in and throw a $20 bill in for a cup of lemonade or a muffin or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't go away empty-handed. I mean, there's lots of stuff there for the kids, the bouncy castles, and, you know, I mean, it's, you know, I mean, you know, just come in and enjoy yourself, and your support means a lot to us also. And we got a really good, you know, committee, you know, listening to us. And also we got another thing to mention now, WestJet. We got, on the day that we're selling tickets only on Saturday for 2 tickets for WestJet flies. They're $10 each, and the draw will be that day. You know, so WestJet always comes up with this for us every year. And Nevaeh's Lemonade Stand, so that people will know, it is now, the last couple of years, a registered charity, and it's called Nevaeh's Angels Foundation, but we keep the name as Nevaeh's Lemonade Stand, I guess, for the reason that's what it started out as, you know.
Good luck with it this weekend. Hopefully it's a great time, John.
Yeah, we appreciate us letting us get on here and talk about it, and come along, come everyone, and come see us, and you know, your support means everything.
100%. I'll see you Saturday.
Take care, sir.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
John. All the best.
Bye-bye.
There we go. The 10th annual. Amazing. Let's keep going. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to Dr. Robert Whitley, Associate Professor in the Department of Psychiatry at McGill University and a researcher at the Douglas Research Centre. Joining us on line number 2. Dr. Whitley, you're on the air.
Good morning. morning, Patty. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. Thanks for making time for the show. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on as a guest.
So McGill, one of the old four, as they call it, between the University of Toronto, Queen's and Western, and of course McGill, prestigious university that it is. So I think we're talking men's mental health here today. I know you're going to be coming to town to participate and present at an event organised by my friend Bill Jeffrey. Where would you like to start the conversation this morning?
Well, this week is Men's Mental Health Week, and it's passed by with a whimper rather than a bang so far, and we're trying to rectify that. This evening we're having a large event which is already sold out, and we will be talking about men's mental health, and I will be outlining some of the statistics which are well known about the high rate of suicide amongst men, the high rate of alcohol abuse, some lesser known statistics. For example, men are much less likely to use official health services in comparison to women. And then I'm going to talk about some potential solutions to the problem, what can be done, what the research evidence is showing about innovative programs, promising initiatives that can really help address some of the men's mental health issues that we're seeing in our societies here.
Before we get into solutions, not to oversimplify this because it's obviously a very complex area, but does it begin with the whole concept of manning up and the bravado and machismo that men are expected to exude, when in fact that keeps us from seeking out the help that we know we need, but are quietly afraid to be embarrassed by it?
Yeah, it's a great point, Paddy. We have a concept called stigma that we use in psychiatry, and stigma really refers to the kind of attitudes, the beliefs, the behaviors that people in the public space have towards a certain group of people or to a certain issue. And the stigma about mental health for both men and women is still surprisingly high despite many educational efforts. But there's a particular stigma regarding men and also a particular stigma regarding women. So women with mental health issues are often infantilized and considered kind of childlike and kind of patted on the head, and that's a kind of stigma against women. But the stigma for men is often that there's a lot of fear-based stigma, which means if a man is to declare to his boss or even to his family or to people in his entourage that he has mental health issues, this can trigger a lot of fear, and the man will have a fear himself of repercussions. So I have some research evidence that shows in male-dominated industries such as law enforcement, the military, oil and gas, security, transport, manufacturing, if you're a man with mental health issues, there will be a great fear that if you raise this and talk about this, that your boss and your colleagues and people around you will be concerned that you're a threat, that you're somebody who might be aggressive, prone to aggression or prone to violence, and that really stops people from speaking out and seeking support, and it stops many workplaces which I've worked with in the past from having initiatives to try and encourage men to speak out and to find programs. So reducing that stigma is really a key aspect of addressing men's mental health issues. I completely agree.
When we talk about mental health, how important, because, if you have an official diagnosis, it's one thing, but should we have a different approach and thought process regarding mental health, mental wellness, and mental illness? Because, not to split hairs, but they are three different things, and they would come with different attachments regarding stigma and solutions and treatment.
Yeah, it's a good point. Everybody has mental health, but not everybody has a mental illness. So mental illnesses are kind of clearly defined and include things like schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, and they're addressed by issues such as medication and therapies. But everybody has mental health, and we could think of mental health as a kind of scale, and it goes up and down according to life events and according to issues that we might face. A lot of the research that I've done shows that mental health is really particularly affected when men undergo unwanted life transitions. Some examples I can give here is if you've been let go from your job, which happens in every province of Canada due to the seasonal cycle and due to changes in the economy. That can be a very vulnerable time. Another vulnerable time is if you've been diagnosed with a serious health issue, a physical injury, or a chronic heart disease, or things like this. A disability can trigger mental health issues. Separation and divorce, especially where it involves separation from children, can also lead to a kind of sense of grief and bereavement and loneliness amongst men. So some of the programs and initiatives that I'm involved with are really trying to fill in that kind of emptiness, fill in that void that some men will feel when they go through these transitions and that their previous life has become obsolete and they have to face a new reality.
All that said, where do we start, or what's the starting point for changing the conversation? Because we've identified some of the root causes and the fear and some of the stigma associated with men's mental well-being. So how do we start the conversation to change the water on the beans?
Yeah, so a lot of the research I've done shows that medication is important, talking therapies are important, but we need more choice in the mental health system, and there are different modalities of healing. That is to say that there are very many ways that a man can heal from a mental health issue or from some kind of a mental illness. And there's some new programs which show that the role of civil society is actually very important, the role of non-profits, the role of even faith-based organizations, that there's lots of kind of grassroots programs happening across the country which are really helping men, and they're kind of outside of the official mental health system. They don't always even use the language of mental health, they use the language of sports or coaching, which can be much more appealing to men, talk about brain health or cognitive coaching or using phrases like this, and they meet regularly and they help men, and men helping each other, and local leaders helping men. They're outside of the official mental health system, and one of the messages I'll be saying tonight is that these are very important. They're happening in Newfoundland, they're happening all over Canada, but often on a shoestring budget, often without recognition, and we need to expand these kind of programs. We need to give block grants to them so they have more secure funding, and we need to better evaluate them and then maybe scale them up, because like I said right at the beginning, a lot of men don't necessarily feel at home in a typical therapy session, one-on-one, sitting across a table. They might not even have time to take off work to go and do that. But these kind of civil society organizations, they're doing things at the weekend, in the evening, with a lot of activities which men might even find more interesting, such as wilderness interventions, going out into the wilderness. These are some of the programs I've looked at, writing workshops, these kind of more alternative type therapies. And I feel that's the future of men's mental health.
I'm not sure how to ask this. I guess I'll just blurt it out. Is there any risk associated with treating mental health, mental illness, gender-based, women versus men? Because, of course, everyone can indeed suffer. So are there any risks with separating out the genders when we talk about this issue?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I did a lot of work on women's mental health when I was earlier in my career, and I kind of did more work in men's mental health recently. And there's a lot of common shared issues amongst every person with a mental illness. But we do know that subpopulations do face different challenges. I've also done work with Aboriginal communities in Quebec, and they face specific challenges in comparison to the rest of society. So we shouldn't overstate our hand here. There's a lot of shared humanity, clearly, between every human and every human with a mental illness. But like I said, men and women do tend to face different stigmas. They tend to, generally speaking, work in different types of industries where the stigma might be quite different in terms of contact with law enforcement for people who might be having a psychotic episode but more delusional. Men are typically seen as more of a threat. Men who work in the military, for example, and may have PTSD, or veterans who are coming out of the military with PTSD, or the RCMP or the RNC, might be facing a different type of stigma to women with mental illness who are coming out of more office-based jobs. So we do need to talk about gender, but I completely agree we shouldn't forget about the shared issues that everybody with mental illness and mental health issues faces.
What might be the ideal way to start a conversation with our friends, so our male friends, if we're going to talk about men's mental health? And I'll get you also maybe offer what women's role could be in dealing with the men in their social circles and or their families and having this conversation. Where do you start? How do you use the words? Because sometimes the question is, how you doing? I'm fine. Okay, that's it. Conversation over. As opposed to using the real accurate words and the descriptors like your mental health, and or talks about suicidal ideation mediation and stuff. So how do we start the conversation to get to an actual conversation versus just the pleasantries of how you doing?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and there's a lot of research which shows it's a myth that men do not want to talk about their mental health issues. A lot of surveys show men are actually very keen to talk about their mental health issues, but only under certain circumstances, only if they feel they'll be listened to, only if they feel somebody will have helpful things to say in response. But there is actually a series, I'm going to talk about this tonight, there's not an algorithm or template, but what I suggest to people, for example, is an angular approach. What that means is not heading directly to the issue and kind of leaning over a table and saying, are you depressed or are you suicidal? But looking at the issue from an angle. So one thing I always say is choose a kind of shared activity, and a shared activity which is shoulder to shoulder rather than face to face. And a lot of research shows men like kind of shoulder to shoulder activities. What I mean by shoulder to shoulder activities is taking a walk up Signal Hill, going fishing down in the harbour or wherever you may be, even going for a drive together. And when you're doing that shoulder to shoulder, talk about issues, but do it in a kind of non-clinical way. And like I said, some research shows using the language of sports and coaching can help. Like, how's your, like I said, there's programs which talk about cognitive coaching. They talk about brain health. They talk about mental training, and you can use these kind of metaphors. And then listening actively without distractions like a cell phone or without deadlines that you have to run off to work, etc. And these shoulder-to-shoulder approaches, there's a lot of evidence showing these are really the best way to get kind of men speaking and for men to feel kind of valued while it's happening over a shared activity. And one thing I should also say is that if you are a woman or a man who's supporting somebody with mental illness, it's very important to take care of yourself. Kind of self-care is very important because there can be a lot of pressure and a lot of stress on you to help. And there are supports out there for caregivers. There are peer support programs. There are helpline numbers. There are groups at hospitals and elsewhere. So I'd say that shoulder-to-shoulder activity is one of the best ways of doing it, but also in the long term to look after yourself if you are in that situation, because it can be very tough and unrecognized burden for the family.
This is maybe even a bit of a personal question, but in this kind of job, and I know many people have very stressful jobs, but the effort to compartmentalize, and so to leave the job behind. When I get in my vehicle and I leave the parking lot, I try to leave this behind for the most part. Now, it's kind of impossible in full, but is that a risky strategy?
Well, in the military, that is what people are trained to do. In the police, it's what people are trained to do. It's what medical personnel are trained to do. That obviously you have to have some established limits to your kind of your professional life and your private life. It's easier said than done, which I think you're alluding to, and it's certainly evidence shows that it's helpful to talk about things. There are supports in place for people in these professions, such as the military, first responders. But it's true. I've done work with lawyers, for example, who are exposed to vicarious trauma because they are representing clients or defending or prosecuting clients who have been accused of some, as you talked about earlier in the program, some heinous acts, and they've had to look at all the evidence and they've had to interact with people, talk about this in court. And it's a kind of newer area of research, how to support people who are in these professions which don't have that huge infrastructure behind them like the military or the police, which still, actually I shouldn't say huge infrastructure, some infrastructure at least to support people who are exposed. But everybody has their own way of dealing with this, and that people should be aware when it becomes dysfunctional. So some people deal with this through alcohol, through drug use. Some people internalize and they can become aggressive. So it's a really good question, and I think individuals need to think about how they are dealing with things like this and try and identify if there is any dysfunctional reaction and act accordingly.
Yeah, and I guess the diagnosis of PTSD, not only about what you saw and the trauma associated with it, but maybe I'd be curious to know what the role of compartmentalizing it and not processing it, how that relates to an eventual diagnosis, as opposed to, well, I can shelve it because I'm a big, brave member of the military and or law enforcement or whatever the case may be. Dr. Whitley, I really appreciate your time. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Paddy. Thanks so much. I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Dr. Robert Whitley, Associate Professor of Psychiatry at McGill University and Research Scientist at the Douglas Research Center. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Eddie. You're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Paddy Doyle. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Good. Perfect.
What's on your mind, Eddie? And before we get going, am I speaking with the Eddie Coffey?
Pardon me?
Am I speaking with the Eddie Coffey, the performer?
Yes, you are.
Fantastic. Welcome to the show, Eddie.
Is it a great foggy day down there?
Attaboy. No, not particularly.
Oh. Now, Paddy, I want to talk to you about Cape Shore Road. Now, the last time I did talk to you, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, it was the same conversation about the Cape Shore Road.
And nothing's improved.
And nothing has changed. It's worse and worse and worse. Terrible. It's a disgrace. I got a motorhome here. I'm in Ontario right now, in Ottawa, and I comes to Canada for 6 months every year. 6 months I'm in Florida. When I come here, I go to St. John's for 3 months. I'll be in St. John's, but for me to go to the Cape Shore, I'm going to have to rent a car. I wouldn't dare take my motorhome over to Cape Shore Road. That's for sure. I'd have to get it towed back, maybe. It would cost me $4,000 or $5,000 because you can't go out there. The road is terrible, and everybody be complaining like you would go from Placentia to Branch in probably 19 minutes. But now that's in a car. But now in a car would take you almost an hour to get from Placentia to Branch, and for me in a motorhome it would probably take me an hour and a half, which I wouldn't go. But my God. I remember my grandmother, God rest her soul, my grandmother used to tell me, and she died at over 80 years old. She was over 80 when she died, but she used to tell me, I was about 14 years old, and she used to tell me, because we always had a big herd of cattle. We always had like 12, 15 head of cattle, cows and everything like that. But she often told me about going to the Cape Shore, taking the herd of cattle to outside St. John's. Manuals, I think. Manuals were the buyers in their manuals for the cattle on the Cape Shore. She would have to drive the cattle to Manuals, take her 2 days. She would stay 2 days in Collinet at a place called Diddham's in Collinet. Then the next day she would go on with the cattle to Manuals, I think. But if it was now, she wouldn't do it now because the cattle, they would all break their legs. She would never do it now. At that time, they had a path anyway or something for the cattle to get over. That was before my time, but she often told me about it. But that's the way the road is now. No, you wouldn't take a herd of cattle over the Cape Shore Road now. It's terrible. And sometimes I wonder who is the ones that's really responsible. I'm talking to you now, Mr. Paddy Doyle. I don't think there's much you can do about it, but except me talking to you. But if the Department of Highways are the ones that do the road, I'm sure they got the equipment, graders, dozers, and everything else, dump trucks, and all the paving equipment. But someone has to pay them. So I guess it's got to come from the government, right?
Yep.
It would have to come from the government. I suppose Andy Fury would have a say in that some way.
Well, yes, and you would hope, though, when it comes to road work, I think you're right. I mean, it is government, but I really don't like the thought of the politicians making decisions about which roads get paved. I mean, we should have civil engineers that make all these decisions based on need, based on how decrepit the road is or the bridge is, versus whether or not we're paving in a liberal district or otherwise. So I get where you're coming from, Eddie, but the politicians have made the road work conversation unmanageable.
Yeah.
Eddie, before I get to the news, what's your performing summer look like? What do you got on the go?
My performing is good. I have to spend a couple of 3 or 4 weeks in New Brunswick, then 3 or 4 weeks in Nova Scotia, I won't get Newfoundland until August, end of August. I'll cross on the 2nd of August to go to Newfoundland. So I'll spend 3 months in Newfoundland and then head back to Ontario.
And where are you in Ontario this morning?
I'm in Ottawa right now.
In Ottawa, okay. It's good to have you on the show. Eddie, anything else you'd like to say before I take a break for the news?
Okay, sure. Thank you, Paddy.
Happy to have you on. Safe travels.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Forever to be known as Paddy Dial. Let's take a break. When we come back, Dr. Chandra Kavanagh is the CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association of Newfoundland and Labrador. Steve is there to talk about the Comfort Inn, and Gary's having some issues with real estate. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the program to talk about a new collaboration between the province's libraries and the Canadian Mental Health Association. Join us on line number 5 and 6 is Dr. Chandra Kavanagh, the CEO of Canadian Mental Health Association of Newfoundland and Labrador, and Fred Whitmarsh, Director of Library Operations with the Newfoundland and Labrador Public Libraries. Welcome to the show to you both.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for having us.
Tell us all about this collaboration, Dr. Kavanagh.
Yes, absolutely. So we are incredibly excited about the Mental Health Learning Hubs project. So this came about as a result of a partnership between the Canadian Mental Health Association, Newfoundland and Labrador, and the Newfoundland and Labrador Public Library System. So essentially, we provide a great deal of training when it comes to mental health, like mental health first aid, suicide intervention and prevention, burnout prevention, anything you can imagine. And we do that across the province. So what we found was that we needed space to be able to provide this training. We also knew that libraries are really fundamentally the hubs of the community, and that more and more people are coming to the library for all kinds of social needs, not just to enjoy a love of reading. So we thought they have space. They have people who have mental health concerns who are coming to them, and we need space, and we can help with mental health concerns. So it seemed to really be a natural partnership. So we'll now be providing mental health training at libraries across the province.
Dr. Kavanagh, that's obviously, a pragmatic move in the right direction. We need to have these conversations. And I'll move on to you, Fred. So you heard what Dr. Kavanagh thinks the libraries are well positioned to be in this partnership. Why do you think you're the ideal partner?
Well, yeah, I think fundamentally a library is there to provide information to the public, whether it's through a traditional book, a DVD, or an online resource or a presentation or a course like some of what Dr. Kavanagh is talking about. So, yeah, this is a natural fit for us to provide that information and provide that support to the entire community and all of our staff members as well through just another way of information sharing, I suppose.
Fred, will your staff have to take on any additional sort of information or training to accommodate this partnership?
They won't have to take anything on. I think it's a really great opportunity. I know, a library is a learning organization, and I think all of our staff are eager to for more training, more support, more information that will allow them to support the community better. So I think what Dr. Kavanagh would be able to provide for our staff will naturally fit into some of the training priorities that we already have in the system.
Dr. Kavanagh, one of the workshops or one of the focus areas are going to be things like burnout prevention. Now, I hate to bring myself into these conversations, but what do you say to me about things like burnout prevention? Because a lot of people listening, they say if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life, but people can indeed struggle with work. There's a lot of pressures in different workplaces. So what do we talk about when we're talking about burnout prevention?
So that's a great question, and I totally agree with you. I love my job. I work every day, but it's a demanding job, and preventing burnout is so tremendously important, especially we see that with particular groups. We see that with our healthcare workers. We see that with our teachers. And frankly, in some cases, we see that with our library workers. There are fewer and fewer free spaces for people to spend time, and so people are really congregating in the libraries, and they have lots and lots of needs, and those needs then get transferred to the library workers who may or may not be in a position to be able to actually help. So I think that there are a number of skills that we can build in order to help us prevent burnout and prevent things like compassion fatigue. And that's what our training provides, is to tell you not just to learn more about burnout and what it is, or compassion fatigue and what it is, but actually to have tangible skills in the real world beyond just, take a bath, do a yoga class, to actually help you prevent burnout in your own life so you can continue to do the job that you love.
So that would be my coping mechanisms. What do you say to managers? Because when we're talking about burnout prevention, not to boil it down to dollars and cents, but one of the most expensive things in business is retraining for new employees. And, to try to get backfill and try to bring professionals in, try to be productive and efficient and profitable. So what do you say to our managers out there talking about psychologically safe workplaces?
I say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I say, start with your good people, your happy people who are in their offices, who are working hard, and provide them the space and the opportunity to learn these things and to have these discussions, because you don't want to wait until an employee is coming to you begging for help. You want to take your happy and effective workplace and make sure that you're doing the maintenance to ensure that it functions that way. Because like you say, it's incredibly expensive to deal with absenteeism, or what we sometimes call presenteeism. It's incredibly expensive to train new people. So on the one hand, it's just a good, kind thing to do to take care of your employees. And on the economic side of things, it's a wise thing to do to take care of your employees.
Fred, how did the public library system deal with those types of issues?
Well, I think exactly what Dr. Kavanagh is talking about. We try to be in touch with our staff to see, to learn more about what they're seeing in the branch, what the challenges they're facing, so that we can proactively provide training and support for them. We have great staff who are working incredibly hard. Dr. Kavanagh also mentioned, nurses, teachers, and I think library staff fall into that same category where they're a caring profession, they're a community-oriented profession. And everyone here works hard and wants to give to the community and support the community. So I think all we can do as an organization is support those folks and give them the tools that they need to be there for the community as much as possible.
Dr. Kavanagh, I don't know how to ask this question. I'm just going to fire away. So when we say have presentations or events hosted by the Canadian Mental Health Association, how different do you think it's going to feel, and how important will it be for this to feel differently with this type of partnership? Because the library is an interesting setting for these conversations, but it might give it that flair that might be a little bit more open or possibly a bit more welcoming than simply having a presentation in a ballroom at a hotel.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. What we want to do is we want to get out there in the community. So one of the things we find is that we are a provincial organization. We have offices in Central, in Western, and even with those offices, we tend to go to the same places all the time. So if we're giving suicide intervention and prevention training or mental health first aid training, all too often we're doing it in St. John's, we're doing it in Grand Falls or Gander, we're doing it in Corner Brook. And the library system is so vast and so diverse that we're able to go to many communities. For instance, we could go to CBS instead of always having things in St. John's. We could go to Steel Cove instead of always having things in St. John's. So I think one of the things that's really special about this partnership is that, is that it allows us to get deeply into the community, to go into the spaces that people know, where people feel welcome, people love their local libraries, and get into some of these more difficult conversations.
And so where do we start? What's the first workshop? What's coming up?
First workshop coming up is on June, I want to say 24th and 25th. That's ASSIST, which is Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. I actually just took my first ASSIST course myself, so I am now certified in ASSIST. And it is just an incredible, incredible course. When people hear the word suicide, I think a lot of people flinch. People are tentative to ask their coworkers, their family, their friends if they are experiencing mental distress or if they're thinking about suicide, because they don't know what would come next in that conversation. And I can say confidently, having done this training, I feel that anyone could come to me right now, say that they had been thinking about suicide, and I have a set of skills and a plan of action that I could put into place immediately. I'm telling you, you might think that there is no reason for you to do this training. There's no one in your life who needs this help. As soon as you do this training, you would be shocked the people who want to come to you. So I would say if you have any interest in mental health at all, if you want to provide a little more care for your community, go to cmhanl.ca and sign up for our first course in partnership with the local library system, and that will be at the AC Hunter Library.
In that type of very difficult conversation, I've heard advocates in the past tell me it's critically important to use the right words. It's not just a check in on how you're feeling, whether it be on a gloomy day or you know that there's trouble in the family or stuff. So how important is it to start the conversation by using the actual word suicide?
So important. And this is one of the things that I learned through this training, and there is a great deal of research to support this. So I know it can be scary to ask the question. People want to dance around it. They want to say, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Are you thinking of harming yourself? Those things can be very, very general. If you put it out there, if you name it, you tame it. So use the word suicide. Say, are you thinking of suicide? Are you thinking of killing yourself? And from there, you know what you're dealing with, and you can start to have the conversation. I think it's when we sort of dance around things, we're afraid that if we say the word, we're somehow going to encourage someone to do something. Absolutely the opposite. Name it and tame it. Learn what to do when someone comes to you and says, yes, I'm experiencing mental distress. Yes, I've been thinking of suicide.
Final thoughts to you, Fred.
I would just say that I'm so excited to be working with Chandra and her team to provide this great, meaningful, valuable service to the entire community through the public library. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for everyone.
It's nice to have you both on the program. Dr. Kavanagh, would you like to say anything else before we say goodbye?
Check us out. Check out this project at cmhanl.ca and sign up and join us at the AC Hunter Library at the end of June.
Good luck with this partnership, and thanks for making time for the show.
Thank you
so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Dr. Chandra Kavanagh, CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association of NL, and Fred Whitmarsh, Director of Library Operations with the Newfoundland and Labrador Public Libraries. Let's take a break. When we come back, Steve's here to talk about 106 Airport Road, the Comfort Inn. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Steve, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Best kind. How about you?
Good. Paddy, I want to talk about the Comfort Inn and the, I guess, drug addiction or addiction services that's going to be offered at the Comfort Inn. Will there be drugs available at the Comfort Inn, or will there be drug testing before entry? I don't see much of it on their website. I'm curious as to how they're going to deal with that.
Well, I don't think there's going to be drugs made available on the at the site, so I've never heard anything along those lines. But I'm going to suggest that inevitably a significant number of the residents, whenever that gets full up and fully operational, will indeed have a problem with drugs.
So, you know, I hear that I've heard that the gathering place, you know, is bad for drugs being available to addicts. And I'm wondering, like, wouldn't that be a good idea to have some sort of drug testing or something in place for the drug users that want to get off? Say you get out of a detox program, you want to go somewhere. You know, the Comfort Inn won't be really a good place to go because there'll be drugs available.
But there won't be, and people won't be allowed to sell drugs at the Comfort Inn if they can be caught. And my understanding is at the gathering place that if you have drugs on you, you are obliged to be allowed to stay there in the shelter to put those drugs aside. I think they put them in a brown paper bag and they put them away. And if you want to take them when you leave, you can. But, you know, in essence, if we're talking about transition, a drug test might identify if someone is using drugs, but part of the hope here at the Comfort Inn is to get them help to kick the habit. So if we turned our backs on everyone who tests positive for drugs, the Comfort Inn might not even be able to achieve what the intended goal is to actually transition people out, because some people need help, and as a captive audience, that gives us a chance to help them.
Yeah, I agree that I understand that part of it, but the part I don't get is that if we're going to have a transitional housing and these people are going to continue to use drugs, you know, a lot of these addicts just go from location to location, the gathering place or choices for use. I'm not saying that the drugs are prevalent and open in these places, but these people are continuing to use drugs and use the facilities to stay. And a lot of them, and listen, I'm not beating up on anybody here, don't get me wrong, but and all these places do great work. But if you're going to allow, or turn your head or not ensure that these people are actually transitioning from drugs, you're just kicking the can down the road. So they'll stay at the Comfort Inn for 2 years, and then they'll go to the next program or the next shelter. And so in order for, to be a transitional place, there has to be some sort of accountability for the people that are staying there, that they are actually transitioning and not just using the services.
I get where you're coming from, because if it just becomes a quasi-emergency shelter and no real difference other than the fact that you have your own room with a lock on the door, then we're not going to achieve a whole lot. So I know exactly where you're coming from. Some of the moving parts about how they're going to monitor and the oversight associated with drug use, and whether or not you're not going to be allowed to go in that room unless you pass over your drugs and can't consume them on site, and have to be actively engaged in treatment, whether it be for addictions or mental health concerns, as opposed to simply having a place to stay. You're right. Unless we have a real positive, pragmatic approach to transition, then we're probably not going to be very successful.
Yeah, and Patty, I'm all on board, with the programs that are put forward. But, if they take it a step further and maybe they have a wing of it, or they have a different place that is sober housing. So these people who are actually want to get off their drugs, whether it be alcohol or whatever, and they have a place to go, a sober housing that no one else there is using, and they're all of the same mindset that they're trying to get clean. And even that community support among your peers that are trying to get clean would be so helpful. And I know, I think we all somewhat know someone or someone's family who has an issue. And I've heard people say, I go to detox and that's great, but where do I go from detox to so I've done that first step. So what I'm wondering is, why not the Comfort Inn have a mandatory graduation from a detox program? Because that's a really big first step for these people. And a lot of these people are intelligent, smart. They can offer so much to our community, and all they need is that kickstart. And I think if they had a mandatory detox graduation first, so 7 days or whatever it be, 3 days, even 5 days, and then go to the Comfort Inn. And that's a great start for those people.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to have the feature of a detox and rehabilitation center, like, for instance, out at Humberwood. I'm not 100% sure how they're going to approach that concept, but your points are well made and well understood here, because, again, to reiterate, it simply can't just simply be a place to stay, because that's a shelter. If they're going to lean on the word transition, then they've got to be able to articulate to us, the taxpayers, and anyway, I'll leave it at that. They're going to have to be able to articulate to us exactly what the plan is, how we measure success, right? Because if it's just a rotating door where people come and go and they're no better off than when they arrived, then what are we actually doing? What are we accomplishing? Probably very little to nothing. So your questions are important, and I'm happy to ask them. But at this point, we don't even think that there's the staff in place to unroll or to reveal exactly how we're going to take this on. But I'm happy to put her back on the front burner and happy to ask the questions, whether it be of End Homelessness St. John's or the ministers responsible, because you're absolutely right on point here.
Thank you, Patty. I just want to end with this point, in that, I'm sure we've all grown up and we've had uncles or cousins or grandfathers who are alcoholics, and they'll do anything. They'll manipulate and do anything for the next drink. And sometimes, our family members say, we're not going to have you in the house anymore if you're drinking. And they don't give up drinking, but they'll go to the next house and they'll kick that can down the road. So I guess what I'm ending with is I don't want to see government enable this for any further. And as a person, a parent or a son or a cousin, I don't want to enable any drug use in my house, any alcoholism in my house, but I don't want them to be able to leave my house and go somewhere else and someone else enable them. And again, I'm not beating up on these people in these programs, because there's some great people out there doing great work, but I just want the enabling to stop at all people's behalf.
Yeah, I guess part of the difference there would be is that as just lay people with no experience in addictions treatment and or counseling or whatever the case may be, it's one thing to reach the end of your rope, as opposed to in this setting where hopefully we'll have the staff with the appropriate training so that they can deal with the issue directly, as opposed to the battles inside the family unit and being fed up with someone's behaviors and what have you. So again, I know exactly what you're talking about there, but hopefully the difference here is that we've got people trained professionally about how to deal with the issue and hopefully try to help people transition once again from their addiction and be better positioned. And I've said this before, whether it be with folks who, even if we start with the fundamentals, if you're part of this home or this facility, we have to ensure that you get some actual training in addition to treatments. We actually have to ensure that maybe we can help you get your high school equivalency. Maybe we could put you in the employment stabilization program. Just do what we can to put you back on your 2 feet so that you can hold up your own responsibilities and be a contributing member of society, right? So there's a lot to this, Steve. It's complex, but we have to be able to be 100% sure that there's the proper strategy in place so this actually, whatever works, means.
Yeah, I agree, Patty. You make some great points, and I'm really appreciative over the attention you pay to this. I am going to end with this now. You're right about the trained people, and the other end of it is, and I've met some great people in some of these places. There are some unique individuals who have compassion and have a personality that goes with their training that will be, incredibly great at this job. And I think we should look at the compassion part of it as long as the training part of it. Some people are just emotionally incredibly able to deal with these people.
I appreciate the time, Steve. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so let's see here. Checking with the producer. How are we doing out there, David? Let's take a break for the newscast. When we come back, Gary, appreciate your patience. He's next to talk about trying to find a house. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Gary, you're on the air.
Hello, Paddy Daly.
Good morning.
How are you doing today, sir?
Doing grand. How about you?
Not too good, Paddy. I'm 57 years old. I just turned 57 at the end of May, and I'm an ex-veteran going back from the 80s and early 90s from the Canadian military. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about me. Since COVID-19, July the 20th, 2020 to the present, I've been suffering from lower back problems, L2 and L3. It took them 3 years to figure out what was going on with me, and leg pain. And I just had an operation, and I was renting a room in a bedsitter and trying to heal for the last couple of weeks since May the 16th. So apparently I live with two Afghan refugees, and I was helping one guy with his English, helping pronounce some words and looking stuff up and whatever. And then one day I received a phone call from a property manager saying that I disturbed people's peace of mind and tranquility in the dwelling, and I had a 5-day notice to get out. And I was astonished. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have nearly 4 years of sobriety, and this gentleman gave me a 5-day notice, and then he was trying to serve it to me at the same time that I was being operated on there on the 16th of May. And he waited till Tuesday after the long weekend and served the notice, and then he said the owners took pity on me and gave me an extra 30 days notice where I had an operation. So I went in to see the landlord tenancy board, and I told them what was going on. They said, we'll set a time and a date up for a tribunal. Just be wary, we'll send you an email. So I'm still waiting on that. But in the process, the gentleman served me the paper. He said, how was your operation? And I said, it's here to there. I'm still in pain. And he said, here's your 5-day eviction notice, but we give you 30 days. He said, I can lock the door. I can change the codes and change the locks on the doors here and evict you after 5 days if you're not out of here. And there's nothing absolute you can't do. You can't break in to retrieve your stuff, and more or less in fear. And he said that this is not personal. So I got a little bit scared, and I moved out of there on the 2nd of June, and I'm up at Salmon Air, couch surfing, I guess you call it, right now. And I don't have anywhere to live. I'm looking for a subsidized unit. a one bedroom, and it's kind of tough. I've been calling around different places. Like, for example, I don't know if I can say Killam has no apartments available. The province of Newfoundland and Labrador apparently has no one bedroom subsidized units available. And I'm at my wit's end here, and you know, I'm suffering from addictions. I'm a veteran. I just had surgery. I'm a construction worker. I spent 15 years in Alberta working in the oil and gas and construction. I'm a concrete finisher, the hardest kind of work you can do. You know, and I lived for 5 years in Vancouver. So I'm just reaching out here. I had trying to get through you, Mr. Daly, and the listeners, if somebody out there could help me get a one bedroom. I was talking to the housing department under Mr. Hutton, one of his secretary. I forget the lady's name, and she said there's money available for funding. And I also talked to Veterans Affairs, and they said that there's money available for funding. But I went to view a place yesterday. It was $990 per month with a $742 damage deposit. And the government only funds up to $863. Pay your own utility. $960 included in everything. That's the cap. So, Mr. Daly, I'm looking for some help because I'm homeless and I pay taxes all my life, with the exception of the last 4 years. And I just called your show today, so I'm a little bit. This is my second time calling. I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm just looking for some help, basically. And someone said to call your show, and you do great work and behind the scenes, and you're very vocal and upfront and honest and frank. So I decided to call you and see where it can go from here. If I can get some help in this great city where I'm from.
So just so I have all the information at the tip of my fingers, so the subsidy dollars from the province is how much, and how much from Veterans Affairs?
But the Veterans Affairs said they will pay the first month's rent, and they will pay the damage deposit. After that, I'll be basically on my own. Like they have the Legion here in St. John's has cards. I think they're like food cards kind of thing, like for Sobeys and Dominion, President's Choice stuff. Mm-hmm. You can go down and sign up. You have to prove who you are. I'm in the process of trying to get some of them, and I'm not working. I just had the L2 discectomy and the L3 discectomy at the same time, and I've never had an operation before. You know, I worked 15 hours a day at construction in Edmonton for 6 years. Started out at 43 as a grunt. An ex-combat engineer in the Army, hardest kind of work you can do. You know, so I'm just looking for a bit of help, and somebody out there can reach out to me and help me get an apartment.
Well, I'm going to see what I can do for you, Gary. I know a couple of people that work in that world, so I have your number. Well, David will keep it for me, and I'll make a couple of calls. And also, there's anyone listening to the program and has heard Gary's plea, if they get in contact with us, you don't mind if we share your number with them?
No, I don't, sir. No.
Okay. So right off the top of my head, I wouldn't know where to direct you right this very minute, but this afternoon when I get a few minutes, I will indeed make a couple of calls, and I'll ask the listeners one more time if they can be part of finding a solution for you, Gary.
Yes, my friend. Thank you very much. So my hat goes off to you. I listen to your show all the time, Mr. Daly, and you're a great help to the people here in St. John's, Newfoundland. And I was just listening to a gentleman about addictions and stuff, you know, like suffering alcoholism since I'm about 11 years old. And, you know, I've been dealing in and out the swinging doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, but now I have nearly 4 years under my belt. I nearly died from alcoholism. So I learned to change my life and my way of thinking and the people that I socialize with in order to stay sober, to stay alive. So I'm doing a good job. I'm not working right now. I hope this surgery on my back, I still have pain in my leg, that I want to reiterate myself from the 4 years when COVID-19 was present. I had COVID. I nearly died with the lower back pain and the leg pain. You know, it's all I want is a bit of reprieve and a bit of help right now, and reiterate myself back into society. And someone suggested by calling you this morning that you do great work and you're on the airways, and you never know who could be listening. and Mr. Daly probably could reach out with an olive branch and get me some help. So
I'll do what I can. And I never make any promises because some of these are really tricky things to accomplish. But I will, on your behalf, make a couple of calls this afternoon. And once again, the listeners are generally very helpful in making some suggestions about what they can or cannot do, or some solutions that might be out there for you. So I will do that. And you can call me Paddy. Please do.
Okay, Paddy.
Just 1 second.
I'm
going to give you a number.
Sir, okay, yeah.
So obviously 709.
Yeah.
738.
738.
4567.
4567, and who would that be, sir?
Ask for Holly.
Holly?
Yep.
Okay. My mom used to say, you have God in your heart, and you live a good life, and if you correct yourself from your mistakes, that you will be, people will notice that and help you up instead of leaving you down in a situation. So that's basically all I have to say. Something ventured, something gained. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I'll leave it up to you, sir, and the kind of people of St. John's. I'm not looking for any handouts. I'm quite capable of, go back to work eventually when I get healed. But right now in this situation, I'm at a loss. So I appreciate you taking the time this morning, sir, and listening to me.
No problem at all, Gary. And you make that call. Make that call. Speak with Holly and see if there's any luck there. Let me know how that works out, and I'll make a couple of calls anyway this afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Daly.
You're welcome.
You have a great day now, and you have a great show going there, and kudos to you guys at the OCM.
Good luck to you, Gary.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Let's take our final break of the morning. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Northern Labrador ferry service delays. It was on the Fogo run. I think it's currently bobbing up and down in St. John's Harbour. NDP member for Torngat Mountains is Leila Evans. She's up after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Leila Evans is the NDP member for Torngat Mountains and joins us on line number 3. Good morning, Leila. You're on the air.
Thank you for having me on, Paddy.
No problem at all. So we know that the Kemituk W was running on the Fogo run. Why is it now currently in St. John's?
No, Paddy, it was in May, like going into the third week of May, that I started to hear rumors that they were going to delay it. And we got confirmation. And the problem is, like a lot of your listeners already know, is we're not connected to the Trans-Labrador Highway. Like my communities in Northern Labrador are totally isolated. They're all on land, so they could be connected by road, but we don't have the road infrastructure there. Now, the biggest problem we have is that they didn't plan to put it back on the schedule for June the 10th. And we were calling for it and put some pressure on government. But Paddy, right now, they put her into St. John's, into dry dock for maintenance, and she's still there. They said that they delayed the shipping by 1 week, so she's supposed to start Goose Bay, going north, fully loaded for the 16th. But we're really worried now that she's not going to start on time, on that new time. Now, Paddy, a lot of listeners out there do know the situation in Northern Labrador, and they know some of the differences in my communities. But what a lot of people don't realize is we have not had ferry service all winter, and what we have to rely on is small twin otter planes that can take up to a maximum of 11 passengers. And Paddy, one of the problems with that too is when you're looking at shipping goods in or out of my communities, it's not only food that's difficult to move. Like, for example, people in the province know an ATV, a snowmobile. Well, the little windshield that you put on a snowmobile or an ATV, the cost of shipping that from Goose Bay to the North Coast is between $125 to $200. So can you imagine now trying to ship an ATV? Or if you wanted to get your, if you need an ATV, or if you're trying to get an outboard motor from Goose Bay, or you're trying to ship your motor up for repairs. We need the ferry for food, for all our goods, all our materials. Construction season is starting now, and the problem is even one week delay is going to really set people back. And Paddy, I've been on your show before, and a return ticket. Now, if you went into Provincial Airlines or Air Borealis and booked your ticket, to say the flight from Nain to Goose Bay, it'll show that it costs $561.42. And a return ticket is $1,022. So, Patty, we rely on the ferry not only for our supplies, but to be able to travel. I got families now calling me because they've been planning to travel, say, for example, with their partner or with their kids. And that's not just Nain, our farthest community. Our closest community is Riglet. A return ticket, if you went in and booked right now, is $718. That's to our closest community for a return ticket. So what I'm saying is, by delaying the ferry, and Patty, what really upsets me is they intentionally earlier decided not to start on time, or it was either that or through incompetence that they're not starting on time. Either way, it leaves us suffering. And I got elders calling me this morning. I had a couple of elders calling me, really worried because they go down to the store and there's not much supplies at the store. I'm in Riglet right now. A lady, I was over at the store just yesterday, and a lady came up to me and she said, she said, I had to order, it was one of the staples from Makovic. And I said, oh my God. I said, the store burned down in Makovic? She said, yes, I'm getting it from the smaller store. So in actual fact, Patty, this is what kind of crisis we're facing, is that the community in Makovic that lost its store is actually supplying the community of Riglet some of the staples. I'm really, really worried what's going to happen. And so for me is we can't have a further delay, Patty. And if you look on the app that shows the location, the marine navigation app that you can put on your phone, the GPS shows the Humdick W on June the 13th is in St. John's, and I'm really worried that she's not going to be up, ready to start on time. And if somebody is planning to travel, Patty, it's only once a week you get your chance to get on that boat. It's not like you can plan today, tomorrow, the next day. So it really is like the differences in the services that we have for Northern Labrador is so different than the rest of the province. Like people in the rest of the province can't even relate to the barriers we face. And I mean, yes, we got airstrips to service by these little small twin otters that's limited in what they can carry. But what really bothers me as well is since they were built, since the airships were built, Patty, we have not had any upgrades to our airstrips. Fog, rain, everything, delays us.
Understood. When would the seasonal ferry run begin normally?
The regular start date is usually just after the first week of June. And that's usually just to make sure there's not additional ice, or it might be the winds may have actually brought some ice in. But Patty, we knew in May we were having the earliest spring. I was hoping they would actually start earlier than June the 10th. I had no idea. And no one on the North Coast would remotely think that they were going to intentionally delay us when we would be ice-free. And that's what's so hurtful. And for people who still had a little bit of faith in this government, this provincial government, we've lost all faith in because we know that they could have started on time. They could have even started earlier. And for us, it's creating so much problems. We are not going to be able to actually have enough food in our stores for people to be able to just have regular, just planning, the cook food. Somebody goes down to the store, they comes back, they starts calling around because the ingredients are not there. They need to be able to find things.
Let's hope that the timeline as described being a week is actually hit, because I know, for instance, when the grocery store burns down in Makovic, is just yet another rung of that ladder that's taken away. So keep me in the loop on this one if you can, Leela. Yep.
And Patty, I just want to add to I wasn't going to speak too much on what happened in Makovic because that's sort of out of the ordinary, having a store burn down. I wanted to talk about the what happens regularly. That ferry is contracted. the deliver service for Northern Labrador. And that when that boat sails, she sails from Goose Bay, and she goes all points north to Nain. And Patty, if you're not in Goose Bay on the day she starts and you miss that boat, you don't get a chance until the next week. If you're in Hopedale and you're coming back to Goose Bay, it's one day of the week you get the chance to get on that boat. So, people don't realize it's not daily crossings. And we've been without the boat all winter. That's why this is creating more hardship. Now, you say, oh, what's a week? What's she talking about with the crisis? But in actual fact, we are getting low. We need the supplies. And, Patty, even if we were having a late spring, normally the Humadic W would start on time or a couple of days later, and she'd usually be escorted by an icebreaker. Back before we had that boat that we don't like, that we're calling to replace, the Humadic W, when we had a real boat, a proper boat for our waters, for our main waters, with a proper keel, a proper hull, Patty, even when there was a bit of ice in, the Coast Guard could escort her up so that we would actually be able to replenish our food supplies. We'd be able to get the essential materials that we needed into our communities. And right now, the fact that we can't access our materials, our goods, say, for example, now, if you're waiting to do repairs for your house, you can't buy a window or 2x4 or gyprock in the communities. You got to wait for it to come on the boat. Contractors can't move their equipment in. But more importantly, I was talking to some people in Nain, and you need the batteries. People are looking for the batteries for their speedboats. And you can't get a battery. You can't get a battery. They're not going to fly the batteries in. So a lot of people are relying on this service for more than just food. It's the essentials for their lives.
Understood.
And right now, and Patty, another thing too is
very quickly, because we just cleared 12 o'clock, so I'll give you just a few more seconds to wrap up, Leila.
Yeah. And also, too, hunting and gathering is seasonal, so we can't afford to miss this period of for hunting and fishing. Thank you, Patty. Sorry for going on for so long.
No, it's no problem. They're just going to take me off the air in a few seconds if I don't say goodbye. But thanks for the information. Keep me in the loop, Leila.
Okay, and thank you very much.
Pleasure. Bye-bye. Leila Evans, NDP member for Torngat Mountains. All right, good show today. Big thanks for everyone who supports the programme. And yes, we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.